When I was younger and I was interviewing for jobs, I had a couple of mentors who interviewed me. And I remember one of them asking me, what's the name of the mail clerk in your organization? Just the notion being that, do you care enough? That was sobering for me. I remember saying, no, I didn't. Well, you should.
I'm Sam McKenna, and you're listening to the Show Me You Know Me show, a deep dive on the impact of personal connection and empathy from the perspective of some of the world's most successful executives. Our guest today is John Taft, Vice Chairman at Baird. Hi, everyone. Our guest today is John Taft, Vice Chairman of Baird and a true visionary when it comes to business and leadership. His diverse industry experience includes 10 years as a CEO of RBC Wealth Management and multiple terms on the board of directors of the Securities Industry Financial Markets Association. In his current role, he serves as a member of Baird's Executive Committee, focused on advancing strategic opportunities and the expansion of Baird's private wealth management business. John graduated magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Yale University and earned a master's degree in public and private management from the Yale School of Organization and Management. And if that's not impressive enough, he happens to be the great-grandson of former U.S. President William Howard Taft. My conversation with John was so wonderful, not only because of the stories that he has, but of the values that he's acquired over the course of his career and his life. I think you're going to really enjoy it. John, I just want to thank you so much for first being with us today. What an honor to get to talk to you. And I think there are 100 stories that we can pull apart, but I will try to succinctly get through quite a few of them. Now, you have a very unique characteristic as one of our guests that I am certain nobody else shares. Your great-grandfather was the 27th president of the United States, William Howard Taft. I want to hear, just a little bit about that background. And I also want to think about how your family's legacy also contributes to your approach to business and to relationships in general.
Well, thanks for having me, Samantha. The uniqueness of my family legacy is that it is a legacy of 6 generations of uninterrupted service at the highest level, public service to the United States of America, going back to my great-great-grandfather, Alfonso Taft, who was Attorney General of the United States and ambassador to several countries. His son, William Howard, not just President of the United States, only president to be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Governor General of the Philippines, and champion of Philippine independence, Secretary of War, extraordinary public servant. His son, Robert Alfonso Taft, 3-time candidate for president. His son, Robert Taft, senator from Ohio. And his son, my first cousin, my generation, 2-term governor from Ohio. So that's what I grew up with. And to say that, that had an impact on the way I looked at the world and the things I grew up believing were important is an understatement. The lesson of the legacy was, no matter what you do, you need to do something that makes a real lasting difference in the lives of real people in the real world. And you need to do it well. The trick is to honor that in the course of your life without letting it compromise who you are or overly influence who you are. In other words, you have to be your own person.
What did that mean to you? I mean, you've had an exceptional career. You served as CEO of organizations. You were deputy mayor. Talk to us a little bit about what that meant.
Happy to do that. I actually wrote a book about it called Stewardship, which is the word I picked to describe the core principle that I thought my family embodied. And the definition, if I were to pick one of stewardship, is responsibly managing what others have entrusted to your care. And what my book is about and what I believe is that we've lost touch with that core principle of stewardship in all segments of society, and that I believe it's the cure for many ills. And we need to find our way back to our stewardship obligation if we are to address the incipient crises or challenges and take advantage of the opportunities that we face as a society.
When we think about that idea of what you just said, and we also think about the idea of servant leadership, what does that mean to you? What is maybe 1 or 2 takeaways that somebody can have from how you lead and they can maybe change or think about their leadership principles differently?
Servant leadership is the concept that when you lead in the service of others. That notion of having a constituency, whether it's the voters who vote you into the office that you hold, or it's the employees who work at the company and ultimately report up to you. Those are your constituents, and your leadership should be focused on serving them. Unfortunately, if you let me digress, it feels like to be successful today, you have to be somewhere on the narcissism scale. The most successful leaders we have in the society we live in today tend to be narcissists. And as narcissists, their biggest danger that they face is that they leach into grandiosity. And when that happens, bad things are soon to follow.
It's interesting because when we start to think in that narcissistic way just about ourselves, at some point, that job, that title, that division will go away. Somebody else will come in. We might get fired. We might get riffed. You never know. And then what are we left with? What is your legacy? It's so important that you really think about the people that you are impacting in the day-to-day, less about what that title means, but what it means in terms of the impact you want to have to them.
I agree. I was a CEO of various businesses for 25 years. And I know what the pull of grandiosity feels like. You have all these people who are treating you differently because you have hierarchical authority. And if you forget your stewardship calling and your servant leader obligation, then you can get in trouble. When I was younger and I was interviewing for jobs, I had a couple of mentors who interviewed me. And I remember one of them asking me, what's the name of the mail clerk in your organization? Just the notion being that, do you care enough? That was sobering for me. I remember saying, no, I didn't. Well, you should. And that's sort of the kind of grounding exercise as a leader that you need to continuously perform with respect to your employees and also with respect to customers and clients.
And imagine the positivity that that person will feel if you walk through and you say, hey, Ben, on your way to the office. And that's all you say. And you just know mail clerk Ben's name, how important and special that person will feel. Talk about show me, you know me, just a very small thing of knowing that person's name.
That's right. And it's not just knowing their name. It's actually caring enough about them to want to know their name. That's where the authentic leadership side of it. And people sniff out authenticity and BS right away. I mean, so if you're not authentic in your interest in and care for others, people will know it.
I want to think about this servant leadership idea and authenticity when it then comes to your clients. So when you think about the way that you invest in your clients, you get to know them, you show them, you know them, you create that sense of authenticity. What is it that's been important to you about how you work with your customers over time that others can learn?
Well, it goes back to the whole reason I got into the financial services industry, which, as again, scion of a public service family legacy. I was a French and English literature major, and I was a newspaper reporter for about 5 or 6 years. I got into finance because I felt it was one of the ways I could most effectively make a real and positive difference for real people in the real world. And I keep coming back to that because every time an industry, a company gets into trouble, it's because they lose touch with what are they doing for real people in the real world to make their lives better. My first job in finance was to raise money for governmental entities, not-for-profit organizations, development agencies, and so forth, to invest in projects that improve people's lives. The first step was saying, what are you trying to accomplish? And what are the challenges or obstacles that you need to overcome in order to do that? And then how can I help you do that?
I think you also have had a variety of roles, right? So we go from reporter to financial services to, as expected, sarcasm in there, deputy mayor.
Yeah, that was a head scratcher for people. I have had a number of different roles, but that was easy because I financed a number of very important projects for the city of St. Paul. The mayor really liked me, and he brought me in as his chief aide for development and finance issues in front of the city. And I did that a couple of years. I was in my early 30s. Learned that as compelling as the family business, public service, and politics was, it wasn't for me. But being on the edges of it was for me, being civically engaged.
Tell us a little bit about when you were deputy mayor, though, because I think there's a really interesting story about an energy crisis, what you had to handle while you were there. Give us an insight of what that was like.
Back in the day, the big thing was the energy crisis, the oil crisis. And the city I was deputy mayor of was the city of St. Paul, which is a obviously northern city that has very long and very cold winters. And in the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, energy costs are a critical ingredient and frankly, a disincentive for people to move here. And so as an economic development project, the city decided to rip out all the boilers, all the heating infrastructure in all the buildings in downtown St. Paul and connect all those buildings by means of pipes to a single communal energy facility. Now, this is something that European countries like Sweden and Norway have been doing for years, and it's called district energy. So we built a district energy project to reduce the cost of energy for building owners in St. Paul, make the city more attractive for incoming economic actors. Reducing the cost of energy also made it possible as carbon transition and clean energy became important, made it possible to burn not just the cheapest, but the most environmentally friendly fuels. So that took 3 years. It was an incredibly complicated project, and we got it done. I just remember having, literally being in tears and having this sense that, that's why I'm here. I felt I'd lived up to what my family had hoped I might do in the course of my life.
To me, we have to create revenue for our company. That it's the most important thing to keep us alive. But beyond that, I feel like once we've kind of gotten into a rhythm, we have a responsibility to do good back to our communities. And I'm the same way. I'm driven by making a difference. And I love that you're here to also make a positive impact.
One of the things that distinguishes the company I work for, Baird, is that we have for 20 years been one of the top 100 as ranked by Fortune best places to work. Now, why is that important? Because, again, everything we know says that engaged employees create better outcomes. How do you do that? Well, there are lots of ways you do that, but the single most important thing is that the people who work at an organization need to understand why what they do from the minute they walk into the workplace until the minute they leave, why and how that makes a positive difference in the world. And if they understand that, and if they internalize that, and if they can feel that in the course of their workday and throughout all the things they're doing at their place of work, then their engagement level will be higher and their outcomes will be better. It's just the way it works. So the role of a leader in promoting employee engagement is to communicate what is it that we do and how is it that we do it that makes a long-term positive difference in the world.
Quite some time ago, I considered leaving a 14-year relationship that I had with Morgan Stanley. And as I looked to see where I was going to go, it actually came down to Baird and another company that kind of faked that authenticity, right? They said things like it would be such a privilege when we have the privilege of managing your money. And they said that over and over again. I wanted to get my Purell out. There was something so different about the feeling that I had with Baird. It was authentic. It was show me, you know me. They'd done their research, right? Hats off to Tim and Eric on our team. But what was it about Baird that pulled you out of retirement? Retirement sounds pretty darn lovely to me.
Retirement doesn't sound lovely to me. It wasn't lovely. It was more like taking a break. And, I have no interest in retiring from life. I will say this, everything I have ever done that turned out to be important and meaningful has been the result of a relationship. So I had known the CEO of Baird for decades through my work in the financial services industry. He asked me, he said, would you ever consider coming to work for Baird? And my answer was, I would only consider coming back to work full-time with you. And I would only consider coming back to work full-time at Baird. And the reason is the stewardship culture, the values of the firm were aligned with my own. But you say that you made a decision to work with Baird in our wealth management business. 100% of the time, it starts with discovery. Let's walk through where you've been, what you've done, what's important to you, what you're trying to accomplish. Unless you know the answers to all those things, you can't be effective in the advice you provide. And if you go back to when I started, it was very different. It was more like, what do we have on our shelf at the financial services firm that we can sell to individuals in the world, and how can I sell that to you? And so the industry has morphed and changed today to a much better place, I believe, where it starts with what are you about and what's important to you.
For Baird specifically, one thing that's interesting about you guys is you don't pay more than your competitors for acquisitions, right? You don't think about the financial competitiveness there, but you really rely on the culture and what the firm brings. Tell us what you stand for there.
The joke is that our former chairman and the firm have learned how to weaponize culture. It is our differentiator. What is culture? I mean, you can get all kinds of squishy definitions of it and everything, but it is the feeling that people have or don't have when they walk into a room, they belong there. In our industry and in a lot of industries, the differentiation in the actual quality of a product or quality of a service isn't that great. So in those cases, what the differentiator is soft stuff. It really is how the company treats their employees, how they view their clients, their commitment to putting their clients above the interests of the firm. And all that translates back into values and culture.
Let me ask you two more questions and then we're going to wrap up. You mentioned hearing a speaker some time ago that talked about making 1,000 cold calls a week. Oh my gosh. And moving beans on his desk, maybe as a motivator. Why was that speech inspiring to you?
Those are actually two different stories, but what they come down to is the notion that an essential ingredient in being successful is the willingness to risk failure. The bean counter one was a financial advisor who every day would put 30 beans on one side of his desk. And every time they made a call to a new prospect, they would move a bean to the other side of the desk. Another speaker, quite in a different context, came up with the thing, and I thought, wow, light bulb went off. No is the first step on the path to yes. If you're not willing to risk failure, if you're not failing enough, then you're not going to be successful. And part of that, again, what's incorporated in that is the willingness to put yourself out there and say, listen, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I have to offer. Do you want it or not? And if you put it that way and somebody says, no, I don't think I want that, it doesn't feel like you've failed necessarily. Although in terms of moving beans from one side to the other, you have. So I remember all these ideas coming together and say, I have to put myself out there. And I have to think about it in terms other than failure.
Could not agree more. I've actually created a Slack channel known as Oopsie Poopsie so that our entire team can share fails. Like you said, it's truly the gatekeeper to success. I'll wrap this up now with one final question. Something we're asking all of our guests. What does it take to get a meeting with you?
Not a lot. And I'll be honest with you. You got me in a week where I probably have half a dozen people pinging me to ask for a call or a meeting or do this or do that I wouldn't say were core to my work. And I say yes most of the time because my feeling is that if somebody took the time and put themselves out there and said, would you talk to me? Not always, but most of the time my answer would be yes. And the other thing is I'm sort of innately curious. So yeah, I'm curious. Why did you want to talk to me? What are you doing? What can I learn? And there have been examples in my career where a completely out of the blue random request to talk or meet has resulted in something really cool. Have this mantra, just say yes. Have your default setting be yes and see what happens to your life. It actually is kind of liberating and exciting.
John, what a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your time and all these stories. Really incredible. We appreciate you very much.
And my pleasure too, Samantha. Thank you.
That was ridiculously cool, and what a great person to look up to. A few things I took away from my conversation with John. First, it pays to care about the interest of others. Whether it's an energy crisis or business acquisition, John approaches every task with his community in mind. He considers what's in the best interest of clients, what they care about, what they need, and he looks at how he can be a steward in those efforts. And frankly, it translates financially. Second, be relentless. Sometimes success is just a matter of not giving up. Put in the extra calls, the extra research. Take time to woo your clients and look for solutions. You don't need to be flashy, but you do need to show you care. Whatever you do, don't stop. This couldn't be more aligned with the mantra of samsales. It was so great to hear his thoughts on this. And without further ado, let's do another round of Sam Spills. Really interesting question from Ty in Overland Park, Kansas. What creative strategies do you use to personalize outreach when prospects have minimal digital footprints? So this is an easy one, actually. And I think it's something people often struggle with because they go directly to LinkedIn, they see nothing there, and then they're like, all right, well, what now? You've got to think about their organization as a whole. So go to the company page. What do you find there? press releases, case studies, values, principles, charities they invest in. Have any of their executives written articles been cited recently? Have there been any resources that they've posted, recent articles that the company has been featured in? There is so much that you can pull from. And I think it's really interesting because if you go and find an article that they've written or that they were quoted in, you can just put that quote in the subject line, right? They'll be so excited that you actually read what they wrote. Let's do another, and that's from Macy in Tucson, Arizona. I'm applying for a job and I wondered, should I reach out to the hiring manager on LinkedIn? I feel like this is a little bit of a hot button issue. So this is a hot button issue, and there's lots of black and white opinions on this, one way or the other, but here's what I think. If you consider the job that you're applying for, you might be one of 10 candidates reaching out. You might also be one of 1,000 candidates that are applying, especially if you're using that easy apply button on LinkedIn. So how do you stand out? Let me give you a recent stat. One of my friends was hiring for a social media role at LinkedIn and got 1,000 applications. Now, he's hiring for a social media role at LinkedIn. So you would think that people would just think, oh, I'm going to reach out to him on LinkedIn and say hello. Of the 1,000 people that applied, only 4 connected on LinkedIn. Guess how many people got interviews that reached out on LinkedIn? All 4. So what I would tell you is you don't need to ask a question. You don't need to push for a meeting. You don't need to do anything. Find that hiring manager and then send them a connection request on LinkedIn. It can be a very simple message that sounds like this. Hi, Sam. I recently submitted my resume for an open role on your team and simply wanted to say hello. If I can lend any color about my background or any clarity about how I'm a fit for the role, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm hopeful to get the chance to interview and look forward to hearing from you down the line. That's it. Really simple, no pushy ask for time, no making demands, no asking questions. You're simply doing something that clearly others won't do and standing out from the pack. Now, bonus question. How do you even find the hiring manager? Number one, this isn't difficult. It's actually listed on quite a few of the job recs. And second, look at the division that's hiring. Do a little bit of Sherlock Holmesing on LinkedIn, and you can probably find it out. Lastly, if you still can't find who the hiring manager is, just reach out to somebody who looks like they might be a peer or a cross-functional partner on that team and reach out with a message and simply say, hi, I'm applying for a position on your team. I simply wanted to say hello to the hiring manager. Do you happen to know who it is? Thanks for the help. That's it. I think you'll find that people are much more excited to help you than you might think. Hope this episode has been helpful, and massive thanks to John Taft for making my year by joining the inaugural season of the Show Me You Know Me show. What an honor to have you. I'd once again like to thank Courtney Garcia, our producer of the show, and Paige Tills. And I want to thank our growing audience who continues to support Samsales across all the spaces and places we like to hang. Our theme music is a song called All at Sea by the artist Zediel. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and if you want to stay up to date on all events and resources coming from Samsales, our newsletter is a great resource for that as well. You can find links in the show notes on this episode. That is all. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you again soon.